Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll give everyone a second to log in as I share my screen. Great. So hopefully you all are in the right place. Welcome to Fundamentals of Youth Apprenticeship, our review of what is the PAYA network. And, hopefully today I can answer a few of your questions and ensure you have all the answers you need in order to submit an interest form to join the PAYA network if you're interested. So, to kick things off, I can give a bit of an overview of who I am, what PAYA is, how New America ties into all of it. My name is Ivy Sullivan. I'm the PAYA Network Manager, and I work at New America. New America is a nonprofit think and action tank based in Washington, D.C., and we serve as the lead partner of PAYA. And PAYA is comprised of all of these national partners you see on screen. It's a national initiative that works to expand access to equitable, high quality apprenticeship opportunities for high school aged youth. A little bit about our work and how the network ties into that. Um, we work with all the national partners work together to meet these three um, goals that we've set at the beginning of the initiative just over 7 years ago. And first, it's to support place-based partnerships that meet our definitions of what a high-quality youth apprenticeship program looks like. Second, to facilitate learning and innovation to support the wide-scale adoption of best practices in youth apprenticeship. And third, to strengthen the case and evidence base for youth apprenticeship in order to mobilize policy, considering that we're based in DC, that's always top of mind for us, but also action and investment from the philanthropic sector. So, first off, PI Sports place-based partnerships. So we do a couple different things that are exclusive to network members to help them start and scale their youth apprenticeship programs. So we have um, worked with JFF to write case studies about exemplary programs. We work with the National Governors Association to run our policy academy on youth apprenticeship. They're actually currently accepting applicants. Any apprenticeship intermediary or youth apprenticeship partnership can apply if they include someone from their state governor's team on the application. And that will be a 12-month proper academy where NGA will coach different teams to help them develop policy to streamline existing efforts to develop youth apprenticeship in your state or yeah, create brand new policy. And also, PAYA hosts different site visits across the country where we go out and we visit um, different programs, different partnerships that are running youth apprenticeship programs. And just a couple weeks ago, if you can see from the picture on the right, June 3rd and 4th, our team was in Charleston, South Carolina, visiting one of our national partners, Charleston Regional Youth Apprenticeships, for a closed door session with their school district partners, three employers in the area that hire their youth apprentices, and a couple educators that yeah, teach dual enrollment courses to their youth apprentices. And a couple other places we visited recently, Indianapolis, Denver, Birmingham. We really try to go all over the country. And we're hoping to host a site visit on the West Coast or in the Western US next year. So another item that we offer is actually publicly available. It's the PAYA Resource Library. Go ahead and scan that QR code there or visit payaresourcelibrary.org and you can see our templates, different case studies, as I mentioned before, profiles of programs, and also some helpful worksheets as you figure out the different components that maybe you're trying to put together to establish a youth apprenticeship program, or if there's some part of the partnership, maybe you're thinking, um, we're having a hard time retaining employers once we recruit them. We have a couple different resources and thought experiments you can work through on the site to help you out. But for PAYA Network members, they can also reach out to us directly for pro bono technical assistance. And we do a lot of those conversations, just sitting down with intermediaries, school districts, community colleges that are leading apprenticeship programs, and helping them kind of troubleshoot and connecting them to others in the field that are facing similar issues. So separately, we also have the PAYA Youth Council. It was launched in 2023, and it's a group of 15 current and former youth apprentices that we pay in order to develop projects, share their stories, share their experiences as youth apprentices, and offer suggestions and recommendations back to the field on how to improve the youth apprenticeship model to meet the wants and needs of Gen Z as they start to enter the workplace. And finally, this is my bread and butter. We host a lot of virtual convenings for the network. And most of them are closed door sessions, and then a couple times a quarter we'll host public events as well. This one on the right, State Approaches to Youth Apprenticeship, Answers from the Field, is part 2 of our series. That's a public event if you'd like to join. And that will feature 3 different state level policymakers that are going to share with us how their definition of youth apprenticeship, either in regulations or in the law, impacts how youth apprenticeship programs are started in their states. Right now, we have someone confirmed from the state of Colorado and someone confirmed from Illinois. So we're hoping to get a good variety for you all. Registration is available on our website. So second off, PAYA is invested in facilitating learning and innovation across the country. So in thinking about one of the main questions that we get, and please drop questions in the chat as we go, and we can answer them at the end of this conversation. But one of the main questions we get from folks that are interested in becoming network members or just learning about the network is why do you say, youth apprenticeship instead of using pre-existing terminology like pre-apprenticeship? I don't have a ton of time to get into the details of this table, but just to highlight for you all in the bottom row, we see youth apprenticeship as being a really comprehensive pathway that prepares a young person for a job or could prepare them for more apprenticeship opportunities, like a second registered apprenticeship opportunity, or for further post-secondary. It really isn't an either or when it comes to apprenticeship, taking an apprenticeship or deciding to earn an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And youth apprenticeship works as that options multiplier to allow students to come out of an apprenticeship program at maybe, 21, 22, 23, and have more options than they did going into it. And all of this, in thinking about that comparison between a pre-apprenticeship and a youth apprenticeship program, it really, concretely comes down to our principles for high quality youth apprenticeship. We believe a quality program should be career oriented, should be equitable, portable with transferable credentials or college credit for a learner after they exit an apprenticeship program. It should also be adaptable so employers can emphasize or deprioritize different components, maybe different related technical instruction courses, depending on what they think is most relevant for the apprentice to learn and succeed in their role. And it should also be accountable to ensure that students are getting return on investment, and of course, employers are getting ROI from this whole experience. And I have a couple extra slides in the appendix of this presentation if folks want to talk about employer ROI, but that's a big a big focus for us for sure. And just another um, way to showcase kind of the pathway that we think is, the most can lead to the most innovation and also lead to the best ROI for students and employers. We see youth apprenticeship as being a multi-year pathway. So pre-apprenticeship or a short-term training program might be 8 to 12 weeks, 16 weeks, summer internship length. But we firmly believe that the most effective programs take a student from the junior year of high school, right when that, existential dread of, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my life starts to pop up, and takes them all the way through maybe year 3 of college or their first year of full-time work. And another chart that might help us as we get into the Q&A and conceptualizing who can join the network, how does this partnership run, is the one on the right here. And that showcases that there's a lot of folks that are involved in starting and sustaining a youth apprenticeship program. So you'll have the school district that's offering, these high school courses, the maybe local community college or training provider that's offering dual enrollment or job training skills courses. And then, of course, industry and employers who we firmly believe should be part of the conversation as to what that related technical instruction should look like. And they're, of course, offering on the job training too. And this chart's available on the PAYA resource library for folks interested in downloading it. Alrighty. And next up, in the previous 2 points that I shared, that's a little more of like an active, um, present day engagement with what's going on in the field. But we also want to make sure that some of this stuff gets written down and some of the insights that we're learning from network members, from our conversations with employers, is really impacting the future of the work-based learning space, and really laying a groundwork for just more innovation and better outcomes, more equitable access to youth apprenticeship. So, in thinking about how we strengthen the evidence base, one of those ways is through our research. One of my colleagues, Lancey Downs, senior policy analyst at New America, hosted a fantastic webinar on a 50-state scan of youth apprenticeship definitions that was published on the New America website last November. And if you scan this QR code, you can read the report. But just really briefly, the report goes over which states have definitions, what's in those definitions, and also to help us understand like the complicated patchwork of um, these definitions. What's happening in Wisconsin likely might not be happening in Illinois, even if um, youth apprentices are going into similar industries. And yeah, also to help us understand kind of how youth apprenticeship sits among existing pre-apprenticeship and existing DOL registered apprenticeship programs. And this is just a great, I love a good map. So I wanted to share this too briefly. This shows the purple states. They have a definition of youth apprenticeship that is defined as being a registered apprenticeship program. The blue-green states have youth apprenticeship defined as being distinct from registered apprenticeship. So they have their separate definition from registered apprenticeship. And then the Golden States have two models of apprenticeship for youth. Maryland sticks out. They're just down the street from us. We have some interesting, we have to have some great analysis on their setup. And then the gray states here, they actually don't have a formal definition of youth apprenticeship. And that might be confusing to some. We know that there's so much great innovation going on in Colorado. One of our national partners, CareerWise USA, is based out of Denver. And yet they don't have a definition. Been thinking about Montana, one of our grantees, runs youth apprenticeship program there, but they don't have a definition to work with at the state level either. So um, it's just a great map that we could keep coming back to as we try to find similarities and differences between how folks run programs. And really, that's just a small taste of the different briefs and reports that we have available. This is all publicly available to you all on our website. And I encourage you all to read through. Again, for network members, they do get exclusive access to our monthly network update, which is a newsletter that we send out with analysis of all the breaking news that's coming out of the federal government these days, and updates that we receive from state policymakers as they're working on legislation or they're getting ready to award funding for work-based learning programs. It's really one of my favorite parts of the job is drafting the analysis that goes into our monthly update that's just for network members, but we do, for the better of the field, of course, post long briefs and reports online. Alrighty, so before we get into our Q&A, I just wanted to share thoughts from our current members. We do a survey of our network about every year, every other year, and just wanted to share some of their insights. They found that the network exposed them to new ideas about youth apprenticeship, that they were able to access a network of professionals that are all committed to quality programs. They felt that the network allowed them to gain more knowledge about what it takes to develop equitable programs and use youth apprenticeship as a regional economic development strategy instead of, um, still valuable, but instead of just an individual strategy, getting learners to and through high school and to a post-secondary option. And also they found that they appreciated the ability to collaborate with different apprenticeship stakeholders across the country that they might not have otherwise met. One thing that we run into time and time again is there are a lot of folks, I'm sure many of you on this call, who are maybe the only person or are one of a team of three or four folks in your organization that's committed to developing youth pathways, and that can be really challenging because folks are really busy doing a lot, and it's hard to take a step back and think about what could we do differently, what could we improve, are we missing something, is there funding out there that we're not seeing, and so our we find that our virtual meetups and our site visits where folks can interact with each other in person leads to a lot of great knowledge sharing, and also the development of some regional partnerships. And I'll give you all a minute to read through these testimonials as well. Okay, I got impatient, but long story short, we find that network members appreciate these like closed door sessions because we can do a deep dive instead of spending a lot of time on, how these like complicated questions about like um, regulations or how youth apprenticeship differs from pre-apprenticeship, like the common questions that we receive in public events. In network events, we can get into really practical conversations. For example, um, there is a plastics recycling company based out of Indiana. And they knew that just for the sake of giving back to their community, they wanted to bring on a youth apprentice. But they weren't sure how they could do that. You know, this is a plastics recycling company with huge machines, a gigantic shop floor. What does that look like? And they were able to work with the team at Employ Indy to identify a few roles where it is safe for a 16 or 17-year-old to either work on the shop floor or earn some HR certificates working in the front office, or to work as like a repairman's assistant in the tools and shop room. So um, that's those kinds of insights, those are the anecdotes that aren't super easy to find, because people are head down getting things done, starting up partnerships, and then moving on to the next thing. So we really appreciate being able to like bring people together to share those stories, person to person, and hopefully inspire others to start great youth apprenticeship programs themselves. All right. And with that, I'd love to thank our PAYA Funder Collaborative for supporting our work. Thanks to them, joining the network and being a member of the network is totally free. There's no cost to our network members whatsoever. And they've really been fantastic thought partners in helping us establish those three pillars that I talked about, and also the kinds of webinars and content and briefs that um, we develop and share out with the network and with the general public. Alrighty, so if you're interested, we'd love for you to submit an interest form to join the PI network. It's pretty easy to submit. There's just a jot form there, and you can send me emails if you have questions about if you're eligible. We do have an FAQ doc in the jot form as well. Um, that should cover a few bases too. Um, and oh, I was going to say one more thing. Let us know if you'd like to get in touch with current network members to hear from them, how their experience has been as a network member, and if you think it'd be a value add for your team. Some questions from the chat. We have, are these slides available for us from today? Yes, we have the slides available on the website where you went to register for the webinar, and on the New America website. And a recording of the webinar will be available on YouTube in the next few days. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. In the meantime, I'll drop another one. Are these registered apprenticeships, are these registered with the Department of Labor? Yes and no. So we recognize that sometimes it's not feasible to register every youth apprenticeship program. So there are members of our network that run programs that are not registered with the Department of Labor or with their state. But we do think it's meaningful and helps build the very limited and small data that's available on apprenticeships across the US to register those programs. But PAYA is really Mm, we've been like playing with this language a bit. Like, we're in favor of building a big tent and letting everyone in to kind of learn from the model and take the bits and pieces that work best for them. Um, but yeah, the network member is open to members that are running youth apprenticeship programs or are hoping to start one in the next 6 months or so, 6 to 12 months. Alrighty, since one other set of slides I wanted to show while we still have time um, is talking about the ROI of youth apprenticeship. And there are two studies out there that are really meaningful to us and kind of cut through the noise where when employers ask, well, what am I getting out of a youth apprenticeship program? Or if they're folks that are working in a company and they've been tapped to mentor a youth apprentice, maybe they're thinking, okay, this seems like a lot of work. I don't know that I want to take time out of my, existing to-do list in order to offer on-the-job training. Um, there's been clear evidence from the evaluation of the American Apprenticeship Initiative that employers do receive a positive return on investment. For every $100 an employer invests, they were able to find that it generated $144 in total benefits for the grantees of the American Apprenticeship Initiative. And that just really speaks to or let me show this next slide, to the benefit of having a longer term program over a short term one. So this chart comes from um, IZA World of Labor, and it was authored by Bob Lerman at the Urban Institute, along with some colleagues at Urban. And here's a QR code if you're interested in looking it up. But the apprenticeship model is helpful to think about when it comes to training less experienced workers, because you do have initially a lower productivity than how much the apprentice is being paid. But then after a certain point, and some estimates, and it's different on the industry, but it could be um, 6 to 12 months is the typical kind of startup period for an apprentice. Once they get their feet underneath them, then productivity is significantly higher, much higher than the wage. And then if an employer decides to hire an apprentice, after the apprenticeship program is over, they will inevitably, increase that worker's wage, but they're already starting at this high level of productivity. This isn't an entry level worker that you're just bringing in the door. Let's say maybe it's their first year out of college. They're already trained on an employer's existing systems, protocols. They're familiar with the industry since they've been working in it for a few years, getting that real on the job experience. Their productivity is still higher. So, cool stuff for the graph and chart nerds like myself. I'll pause for questions in the chat. Let me pull this up. I see there's a deadline for submitting the interest form on June 30th. Are there other application cycles available? Yeah, so we just hosted a recruitment cycle at the end of last year. That was June, I mean, not June, December 19th is when our last one closed. And so the second one, recruitment closes June 30th, but we'll likely host another one. We need to kind of set the date on that, but it might be nice to do it in January of next year. Um, I would say if you're interested, but you don't think you have enough time to fill out the interest form, just send me an email, let me know. Um, and, and we can kind of walk through which portions of the form might take more time than others. But a lot of folks can fill out the interest form in one session, and it's not too complicated. We do um, understand that it's hard to get, specific numbers on, how many apprentices you might be serving, or, um, maybe you're thinking about starting an apprenticeship program, a youth apprenticeship program, and you only have maybe one or two partners set, but still working on the school district partner, whatever it may be. Um, that's all really interesting to us still. And part of why we appreciate estimates as much as concrete numbers on the scope of different programs is because it does inform us and it does inform our funders on what's actually happening on the ground when folks are starting youth apprenticeship programs. It's a bit of a blessing to be, in DC and be in the policy space and having all these like high level field building conversations with our national partners, but it's really the network members that inform us of like what's actually happening and where we should step up in order to serve you all better. So yeah, just send me a note if you're concerned about being able to fill out the form on time, and we might be able to work something out. Any other questions? We have a few minutes left. Is there information on the PAYA website that outlines the difference between youth apprenticeship and youth internships? Um, I think there should be. Um, the the only reason why I'm hesitating is because there is like a pretty large gap between what an internship might offer and what youth apprenticeship offers. Just going back to our chart here, shield your eyes. I'm going to look through a bunch of slides here. Um, I'd say an internship would fall somewhere in this category, like pre-apprenticeship, except for, without explicit preparation for an apprenticeship, it might be more of a career exploration opportunity, some work experience, but typically we there's a time and place for internships. It's just unfortunately a really vague definition of what an internship could be from one employer to another. So for some, it's a paid experience that lasts, maybe it's 3 months over the summer, and students are working on a capstone project the whole time, and they're writing newsletter content, or they're sitting in on meetings with executives and really getting a feel, shadowing people, getting a feel for what that job looks like, or maybe they're working in retail management, and they're able to take a tour of facilities or get some hands-on experience, and those types of internships are fantastic. Unfortunately, there's a lot of employers that offer internships that are not high quality. So that could be either they're entirely unpaid, which we don't believe in. We believe that folks should be paid for their labor, or they're paid, in a stipend or minimum wage, and they're grabbing coffee for their employer, or they're taking notes in meetings and not being treated as an employee. And youth apprentices are hired by the employee. Um, there are different setups. Some of our network members, they serve as the sponsor for the youth apprentice instead of the employer serving as a sponsor. But um, in the cases where the intermediary is serving as a sponsor or employer of record, um, the the apprentice is treated as a full-time employee by the employer. And one way of that, we just spoke with an employer in Charleston at our site visit, and I'm thinking back with the he runs an HVAC installation and maintenance company. And so they just hired their first youth apprentice, and they were excited, but a little unsure because they were new to having youth apprentices. They'd had interns before, but they weren't really sure how that would go. But it became clear, even just saying, okay, this is our our new youth apprentice, they're on the job, that's they treated that youth apprentice as a fellow employee, even to the point where that apprentice, it turns out they are colorblind while learning how to become an HVAC technician, which is a bit of an issue. You want to make sure you don't cut the red wire and cut the blue one instead. But they were able to work with him and accommodate his needs on the job, and we're able to just label, which one's red, which one's blue, and then let him get to work like a regular employee. Um, Versus if you had maybe an intern, or there wasn't that like kind of culture established around that youth apprentice's experience. Um, you might just say, okay, that's just, you know, they're an intern, they're only going to be around for 3 months. You might be less inclined to accommodate their needs, or, well, not to say that. I mean, there's just more of a lot of what we do is kind of like narrative development around apprentices. And for a lot of people that are new to hiring young people, the title of a youth apprentice has a little more gravitas than an intern, and that can go a long way, in terms of like really establishing processes to support that person, versus an intern that there's a time limit on how long they'll be working for you, and they likely won't work with you after their work-based learning program is over. Another question, do you have to pay to be a part of the network? Nope. No fees, no cost to join, no membership fees, no charges. We don't have any kind of credit card charging system, nothing like that. I wouldn't know how to charge you. This Our work is entirely supported by our philanthropic funders. Just thinking back to that question about internships, um, we were we've been toying with the idea of building out that table that I showed you all, comparing youth apprenticeship to registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, and making it look a little fancier, and putting it on the website. And I'm thinking we should do that now, and kind of add another column for internships too. Alrighty. Well, seeing no other questions, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't hesitate to send me an email. I'll be by my inbox all afternoon today and tomorrow. And can answer your questions there. Any program specific questions too. And in the meantime, make sure you scan this QR code so you don't lose the link for the interest form. We're accepting forms until midnight, your local time, on June 30th. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.